Okay, everybody, here is some stuff about Chapter 13. This is going to be the last chapter that we're going to go over. If we look at and talk about the concept of globalization, globalization has a lot of controversy to it. Um, you know, how can globalization hurt people? How can globalization benefit people as far as, the support of free trade and maybe some concepts that we feel as maybe from a moral standpoint, globalization might hurt the world as far as the exploitation of workers. But then again, we also want, in some instances, cheaper prices, which globalization can provide with us, right? Um, we hear about the words tariffs and all that stuff that's coming through uh, uh, in our lexicon now, and some of the things that might exist as a result of using the system of globalization to uh, help stimulate our economy. Now let's take a look at it. We had globalization in World War One. We have a wave of globalization that kind of took in the back of World War Two, and it's the growth of international trade, foreign countries being able to invest in our country in a globalized system of money, which could be very, very comparable to what happens in the EU. All right, the EU, the European Union, is a confederation of different uh, sovereignty, sovereign nations, and they have a flat currency amongst some of them known as the euro. Okay, so what is trade? Basically we trade mostly with countries, between countries, sending products back and forth, usually done by a few small countries. Content of trade, it was uneven at the time. Trade surpluses in Europe and North America, and kind of the rise of modern consumerism, and American and European countries manufactured their own products. By the status quo, we started to see extended trends in the 60s, especially due to technological advancement and the rollback of prior barriers that politics had put into place. Trade becomes a large percentage of national economies. So we provide maybe we manufacture a product and then send it to another country. They pay for it. We take the money back and take a profit. Or we import goods and then we sell it here in the United States. So if you look at a T-shirt or maybe in some type of car or whatever, a lot of that is here in the United States due to a trade kind of agreement between nations in the world. A lot of our economy has shifted over to white-collar jobs here in the U.S. We really have, rarely have assembly jobs here in the U.S. as a lot of things are automated, and also due to, minimum wage laws and certain safety factors. These jobs are done in maybe third world countries where they don't have as many restrictions. And I'm sorry for that loud motorcycle. If you can hear that in the background, I have a neighbor who has a very loud motorcycle. Let me let him pass. Okay, sorry. I do my recordings right next to my window looking out, so he usually kind of guns that motor every day. Not too appreciative of that on my end. Okay, so when we talk about direct investment, multinational corporations have always existed. And then we still see kind of that whole spirit now in the U.S. where, say, a company like Apple does businesses in different nationalities, or not nationalities, sorry, in different nations, and how they operate. And they might have some type of business or some type of presence in that nation, whether it's Apple and doing business with China. Maybe having a manufacturing plant over there. There used to be a high cost of long distance communication, but as we all know, with the advancements in technology, that's kind of hasn't really been a obstacle. Um, a lot of these barriers went away because the fall of communism in Eastern Europe, the more liberalization of the economy in China and India, and the doubling of the workforce, which I want you guys to take a look at in the book, that provided maybe third world countries providing cheaper labor to us here in the United States. Okay, we'll go and we talk about a globalization of money. Foreign exchange markets are the largest and most fluid in the world. It's existed before, but the volume is skyrocketed. We have a floating exchange rate, so you exchange your money. Currency trading can be a profitable business in itself. So if you trade currency, if you go and try to buy maybe some dollars by using euros, you might have a beneficial trade to you in that, and it might be profitable. You might make money off of that because in some instances, some currency throughout the world might be more valuable than the currency that you hold. As far as international debt, we have an international bond market. China kind of holds $1 trillion in treasury bonds right now. When we talked about the system of mutually assured destruction and how China and the United States probably would never engage in a bloody conflict, the reason why is we depend on China for cheap labor, and China holds a lot of our debt. So North America and European countries are creditors to the world. Is this good or not? So I mean, that's for you to decide. It's kind of an ideological stance. International law has also gained influence from economic globalization, and state sovereignty makes that international law an awkward concept. No global power exists to enforce international law, and powerful leaders are always able to break agreements, as we see maybe with the Paris Accords or some of the things that have happened through the Trump administration and the Obama administration that's tried to introduce. The Geneva Convention was an international agreement that sometimes isn't respected, and it seems like the only one that's respected is probably the United States. In some instances, it's kind of an agreement between nations on how to kind of mitigate the horrors of war by treatment of POWs, not using chemical weapons, etc. Today, the Geneva Convention has 194 people participating, or countries participating. Violations can cause serious diplomatic problems. Although there's really no body to enforce it, and the UN really has no way of enforcing it. We also have GATT, which is an agreement for international trade. It eventually became the WTO in 1995, and what they basically do is monitor and enforce trade policies that international companies set up. Nuremberg trials were a basis of human rights in international law. The Nuremberg trials were used to convict Nazis of war crimes and crimes against humanities. This is done through the UN International Criminal Tribunals. And one of the other times we've seen this used was in a response to a genocide that happened in Rwanda. If you want to see a really good movie, there's a movie called Hotel Rwanda that stars John Cheadle that is very excellent and touches on some of this. And the ethnic war in Yugoslavia, where Yugoslavia eventually broke up into different countries as a result of ethnic cleansing by a gentleman named Slobodan Milosevic, and I use gentleman term loosely. We have the International Criminal Court, which tries war crimes, and genocide. 122 countries participate, but as we could see here, there's some of the bigger countries that don't. When we talk about international organizations, the UN was, after World War II is a good example, where we have the General Assembly, where every nation receives a vote. We have the Security Council, the UN Security Council, which can authorize military forces for peacekeeping or humanitarian aid. A good example of that is the intervention into Iraq and some of the things that happened as a result of that kind of that peacekeeping process that happened, and the threat of nuclear war, or the potential of nuclear stockpiling of weapons. Um, you can go and see some of the problems of this. The UN nation today, the UN is an umbrella over a vast number of organizations. Um, Programs regarding refugees, women's rights, and environmental issues. Some of them provide technical matter control, provide coordination on technical matters. Others control huge resources such as the World Bank and IMF. And we also have international non-governmental organizations that work with each other to provide services in different countries. Greenpeace and Doctors Without Borders are probably the most famous ones. The EU is a fairly, I don't want to say recent, but in the past few years, an organization that has developed. As an example of a regional integration, began in the 50s as a way to achieve peace and prosperity following two world wars. The EU has 28 members today. We know the problems in Europe right now and their whole Brexit issue, which I encourage you guys to pay attention to, because this might really have an effect on our economy as well as the global economy. And some of these 18 member states share a common currency that is known as the euro. And here is the map that I want you guys to take a look at with regards to trade. Okay, when we talk about what are some economic winners and losers here in rich countries, and the United States is a good example. Wealthy people and skilled workers have gained new frontiers. Poor people and less skilled workers have gained competitors, and as we all know, that those are competitors from other countries that don't have a minimum wage and don't have kind of that protections that laws will bring. We've seen a rising inequity in almost every industrialized country, which we could see here in the U.S. And a little bit more about this. The top 1% have captured most of the economic gains in the last 25 years, and we've heard that kind of ad nauseum here in the United States. And some of the benefits to consumers that we having winners, we are having the winners and losers in richer countries is prices of manufactured goods are made flat. Items have become better even at the same price. Especially benefits the poor, who spends a large proportion of the money on consumer goods than rich people do. But on the other end, in the developing world, people can be exploited. Millions of people work for pennies, and some of the working conditions are not safe. So we've seen that. But as we can tell, growth has been uneven, especially the development. And we'll also see growth is uneven in developing countries as well. Villagers remain very poor despite urban wealthy members, and tens of millions of villagers flee into cities in search of opportunities in India and China. Kind of attest to what we see here in the United States with immigration, and maybe illegal immigration. I'm going to post a video about the battle for Seattle under the WTO, where there was a riot up in Seattle in 1999. And there'll be a little bit better explanation of that than the book gives. And we're going to go ahead and end it there, and with the question, do you think globalization is a good thing or bad thing? It's basically an ideological position, right? And some views by the socialist, fascists, and Islamists, and liberals, modern liberals, and so on up to the conservatives. I want you guys to think about that. Is it worth? I mean, what's the cost? Do the benefits outweigh the cost? So it's a very interesting dilemma that we have here. And take a look at this table, and this table should summarize things for you. And also, the book also will focuses on why the United States supports free trade. Okay, so go ahead and take a look at that. I'm going to post a video about the Battle of Seattle, and go ahead and take a look at that. There won't be any questions on the final exam about the video I'm going to post, but more of a FYI type thing. Okay, if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.